Morning. We are walking through the book of Mark, taking a look at the life of Jesus. And as we all know, these Gospels are there for us to learn about Him and to learn from Him and to have our own lives guided by Him. And so as we go through this Gospel of Mark, we look at every opportunity for us to learn exactly what is He trying to teach us. What is He telling us about who we are supposed to be? We come to a pretty remarkable place right now. We are still in the very first chapter of Mark. However, we are going to cover considerably more verses today than we normally do because we're looking at these events where Jesus came healing people. What a remarkable thing that was. Jesus came preaching. He was preaching a gospel of repentance and of renewal, but then he very boldly established his authority by healing the sick and all kinds of sick. There were those that were coming to him who were possessed of evil spirits and demons. Boy, this really brings about a lot of questions, doesn't it? We ask, does this still happen today? And we just wonder exactly what it is. Well, there's a lot that I don't know at that point. I do know that there are some people who seem to be possessed by evil. And yet I still know that if we choose to allow God to be living within us, that greater is He who is in us than he who is in the world. But nevertheless, there were those people at that time whose lives were possessed by these evil spirits, and they came to Jesus for healing. There were those who were physically paralyzed. There were those that were blind. There were those that were unable to speak or unable to hear. There were even, on occasion, we don't read this here, but in other places, we read about a few instances where Jesus came in contact with people who had already died, and He brought them back to life. At any point in history, this would have been an amazing thing to witness. But consider the world at that time. It was a world of no aspirin. It was a world of no knowledge of germs. They had no real understanding of real effective medicine, at least not like we have now. There were no oncologists, there were no rheumatologists, there were no orthopedic doctors, there were no ophthalmologists, there were no dentists as we know today. There was no Neosporin to put on a wound. And there were no Band-Aids to keep a wound sterile. Indeed, physically, it was a much different world than we live in. And yet into this world of very limited medical understanding comes Jesus. Before any of this, any sickness that people experienced actually held kind of the looming danger that it might not go away. If you didn't understand what brought it on, you might not understand how it would ever be fixed. And in the case of a wound, you didn't know if that was going to lead to death or not. There were so many things that were encountered because of physical problems, illnesses, and injuries, that everything seemed to be a life-threatening matter. Expecting a cure for anything at that time was really much more a matter of hope than it was of a reality-based expectation. And yes, there was, this is interesting, there was the concept of medicine at that time. The Greek physician, Hippocrates, he's called the father of medicine. He lived 400 years before Jesus. And we are amazed at some of the things that he discovered and he taught to his students. Even modern doctors today take the Hippocratic Oath based on the the ethics of caring for people who are sick. And yet, few of us today would be willing to go to a doctor whose knowledge was limited only to what Hippocrates knew. And there is also the question, Hippocrates lived over in Greece. There is the question whether even the basic elements of medical knowledge were available to the people of Palestine at that time. And I know some will point out that Luke was a physician, but again, would you be willing to go to a doctor today who only had the medical knowledge of Luke? Now, Luke had some other knowledge that's much more valuable to us and was actually much more valuable all through history, because Luke also offers some healing for some spiritual matters that's really the heart of the issue, as we will see. And so actually we might not be willing to go to a physician today who had only Luke's knowledge of medicine, but we each individually might go to Luke fairly often on spiritual matters. As we read the Gospel of Luke and as we read the book of Acts that Luke wrote, we gain a great deal of understanding of spiritual matters in that. But back to the matter. Here is Jesus walking among the people, compassionate about their pain, and instantly healing them. What an earth-shaking event that was. Of course people were coming to him from all over in order to be healed. Of course people saw in him a hope that the rest of the world could not offer. And of course, word about him spread very quickly. But the healing of bodies was not Jesus' main event. It wasn't the very purpose for which he came. Jesus came to heal them spiritually. Later, even the faithful Apostle Paul had a problem, a physical problem. He was in need of healing, and he went to God with that need, and he didn't get the physical healing he wanted. At that moment, there was a demonstration of Christ's greater purpose, and that is that he didn't come just to heal our physical bodies. He came to heal us spiritually. And what Paul recognized when he had his problem and took it to God was that the healing of his physical body was not nearly as important as him having the right relationship with God. And therefore it was at that time that the Lord even spoke to Paul and said, "My grace is sufficient for you." Paul was made strong because he understood his own weakness. And it was only the grace of God that really mattered. And so we see that in the ministry of Jesus as well. When we look back at the ministry of Jesus as he was healing, we are enthralled by just picturing what that must have been like. And we appreciate the fact that Jesus did that. But understand, physical healing was not the main event. The main event was for him to come and heal us spiritually. I hope that you're spiritually healed even this day. And the rest of this day, live as one who has been renewed spiritually. Let's make this a good day. Bye.
They resound with God's own heart. Oh, let the ancient words impart. Words of life, words of hope.